Yeah, so we're going now, but no, it's funny. I don't start with anything official, really on these things right now. It's just literally, I'm going to ask you some questions. Hopefully, you're comfortable with it. You don't have to prepare any canned responses. It's not a big pitch about Signal advisors, which you happen to be an owner of, which we're going to talk about either way. And by the way, just the shirt topic, just to kind of touch upon that, because we were just talking about that. So when I got
we're well coordinated here. I like the it looks like you sent out a memo about it, but it actually is just very organic, very natural.
So recently I sent you a link. I've started doing some TV spots, and I wore my Strategy Marketplace t-shirt on the first one, which was like, it was more of this entrepreneurship business. It was called Liquid Lunch with John Tobacco, and the guy's drinking a martini.
John Tobacco is just, I mean, it's a great name. It's a solid name.
Yeah, well, he was on Newsmax for a while, but he's drinking a martini on his show. I mean, it's Liquid Lunch. It's called Liquid Lunch for a reason. So I thought this was good attire. And then, she reams me like right after. She's like, "Hey, you can't do that. You have to have the suit on if you're going to talk on any other networks. Like, I don't care what they're wearing. You're a financial guy." I go, "Okay, point taken." I mean, like she knows, but as soon as I did that, TD Ameritrade, and then I was just on a station called RT Television last night, talking about the business tax rate hike and all that stuff. And
okay,
interesting. But I gotta tell you,
yeah, it's. I thought those days were coming to an end where you can't be taken seriously unless you're wearing a tie. I figured at least COVID would have put a little bit of pressure on the dress code thing, but it's coming. It's slowly but surely. The suit and tie requirement, I think, is dying a slow death.
I think it also depends, what you're marketing to. I mean, I get the whole PR, Hollywood game, and they have to put a pitch reel together. Their job is to get you onto shows so you can get your message out and people can know who you are.
Right.
And
you got to look the part.
Because of this, though, stuff like this, podcasting, right? Where you can have
there's less production requirements. People are going to wear what they're going to wear, and so you get to see people in their natural element. In my case, that means I have 2 sleeping dogs on the couch behind me and some school buses from my 3-year-old who left them there this morning on their way out of the house. So but yeah, you're seeing people in their real element, natural habitat.
Well, we should probably introduce you. If they're coming to my podcast or they're on Strategy Marketplace on our channel, then they're going to know at least who I am a little bit. But I was excited that Jake Cohen, who happens to be, you're with Detroit Venture Partners, but you're also an owner of Signal Advisors, is on the show. Young guy, talented guy, somehow personable. Somehow I tend to like talking to you. And
we'll see. You haven't had me on an hour podcast, so we'll see if that's true by the end of it.
Yeah, well, I asked you this before, but just in case other people would like to know, what got you into, first and foremost, I think the most people that would tune into this this isn't necessarily just for people looking for financial advice or anything like that, because that's not necessarily what I'm doing here. I'm more interested in stories and entrepreneurs, business owners, trying to figure out, what can help each other out. That's kind of where I like to go with things. Mm-hmm. So for you being, you went from college into almost the VC space, right? I mean, what's your background and how did that transition happen?
Yeah, I mean, my background growing up in an entrepreneurial family, I think that's kind of the real relevant background. My dad was always starting companies my whole childhood, and my grandfather was an entrepreneur, and he was in the retail business and the furniture business, and my dad got into business with my grandfather, and they went and started and ran a bunch of retail furniture stores, and then when they sold that business, my dad started business after business for years. And it was exciting to grow up in a family like that, where you saw, these hopes and dreams embodied in an idea. And let's see, he would take me with him, we'd go check out a store, go see a new product, and, like on a business trip and it just, you grow up with the enthusiasm for entrepreneurship. I think, I like to say if my parents were doctors, I'd probably be a doctor, but my dad was an entrepreneur, and that's what I saw and knew. And my mom was an academic and an educator. And so I put myself through a lot of school. I think that was probably my mom's influence. I went to undergrad, law school, and business school. And so, but I had the kind of the entrepreneurial drive from my dad and my grandfather. And so, honestly, how I actually got here is I started a company when I was an undergrad called ugrub.com. It was actually called eatblue.com, which was University of Michigan. So if you know Go Blue, this was Eat Blue. And that was a great experience selling door-to-door restaurants. It was like Grubhub for college campuses. And so that got me, hooked on the tech startup world. And then I transitioned.
I'm going to pause you right there.
Yeah, please.
Okay. What inspired you to do that? I mean, I understand that feeling when you see an idea, but what inspired you to all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to deliver food to college kids. I'm a college kid. I'm hungry. I wish somebody would do this for me. How did that start for you?
You pretty much nailed it in terms of, it was from personal experience, but it wasn't a light bulb moment. I have to stop and quit my job or quit school and do this thing because it's such a great idea that I just have to do it and I can't get away from it. It was kind of the opposite. It was more, I felt like, I wanted to start a company. I didn't know what the company was going to be. I had been talking about starting a company for a long time, and it was time. And so I was like, okay, this summer, this is going to be the summer where we start a company. I don't know whether we're going to be baking cookies or mowing lawns, but we're going to do something. And so, I that's kind of some advice I have for people is if you're waiting for that light bulb moment, that's going to like drag you away from your day job or from whatever you were doing in the past. It doesn't always work that way. It's, deciding to start a company and then figuring out what that company is going to be is how it worked for me.
Did you guys have, they started this when I was, I think a senior at my school. They started an entrepreneurship, a club, which was kind of unique because, entrepreneurship was not really taught when I was in college. I'm a little bit older than you.
We're pretty close. We're pretty close.
Our hair has about the same amount of gray, I think.
Yeah, I'm 39, so I'm headed on I'll be 40 in January next year. But I wouldn't say that it was the university's programs that got me excited about entrepreneurship. I kind of came in with that enthusiasm, and the programming has really taken off at University of Michigan since I left. But there were some programs there when I was there that were helpful. We did pitch competitions, and I think we might have won $6,000 or $7,000 in these pitch competitions that really at the time felt like a ton of money. And so it also forced us to think about our business in a different way. So there's certainly great programming there at the time, but it wasn't like it is today where it was just an explosion of entrepreneurship on college campuses and you can't avoid it. I don't know of any. I might have known one other friend that started a company when he was an undergrad at the time at Michigan. And now, everybody knows somebody. And so we were a little early for this whole wave.
You say I'm assuming it was you and some buddies. And are you still in contact with those buddies? Do you work with those buddies today?
Yeah, actually, it was me and a couple friends, and it's funny. One of them is a partner in a law firm that actually acts as our general counsel at Signal Advisors, which is awesome, and I trust him more than anybody. And then the other friend became the CTO of another company that we invested in, and so it's that was our team back in undergrad, and now we're all kind of working together still in different capacities, which is fun.
So do you think also just, for businesses to grow, because you just said the team and the fact that you're working with these other groups, you think your internal network and sphere of trust in that circle really helps out to propel somebody who's like an entrepreneur or somebody starting a business?
It matters kind of the people you surround yourself with and the team. The team is so important. It's tough to be a solo founder. Right. People do it. There are stories like it. It can be a lonely existence. It's not what we wanted to do at Signal Advisors, and it's not what we did back in undergrad. I think it's all about having the right team, and doesn't mean you're going to be always on the same page and always in agreement. We had lots of debates. That's a natural. If I think back on, how our teams work together, a lot of disagreement, but we work it out. And that's, I think, where you get growth and you push each other and you end up with a better answer. And so Yeah, there's some magic in having the right team.
Sure. All right. So you started delivering food to other hungry college kids. So what happened with that company?
We made a little bit of money on it. I think, probably the biggest challenge, if I look back on it, you in hindsight 2020, is I think we thought we were successful. I think that's the worst thing you can do to yourself is feel like you were successful because what pushes you to kind of keep growing, and how hard are you going to push, and how badly do you want to build the business, and so we had a lot of fun. It was, but we got to a point where we felt like we were successful, and there were other things we wanted to do, and so we ended up selling the business in 2006. But that company, college kids in Michigan have been using Eat Blue now since 2002. We started it, and it hung on for like really 15, 16 years was, how long it had new owners after us. But eventually I think the explosion of Grubhub and Uber Eats in this past like pandemic have probably finally made it less a dominant player on campus. But it literally lasted for 15 years after we left, which is pretty cool. And so we wanted to make sure we put it in good hands when we left. Awesome. But it was fun. I mean, I'll tell you what I learned the most from that experience. Door-to-door sales to restaurant owners is a great learning experience because nobody wants to talk to you. You have something that's going to benefit them. And 90% of the time they try to send you out the door. But if you can get through to them, and if you can have a sit down and actually explain to them why you are the 1% of the solicitors coming in that door that are actually worthwhile to talk to, you get a high close rate and gives you confidence. And it makes you love, for me at least, this there's like a bad word around sales, for some people. And I love sales. And if you don't love sales, like you can't be a great entrepreneur. You can't sell your vision to your team to get great team, to get people to join you in your kind of crazy adventure. You can't get investors behind you. You can't get, customers to believe in you when there's nothing there to believe in. And so I would say that was the best experience, was the grind of going in and talking to customers actually was an incredible learning experience for me.
Yeah. Isn't that annoying though? I seem to get, this used to bother me a lot. I used to get really upset. Somebody would come into my office. This is me putting the financial advisor hat on.
Yep.
And I've been in sales my whole life, but they would come in, I could, excuse me, mathematically show them like, hey, first and foremost, I'm saving you money. I'm mathematically proving that I can, achieve your goals. I'm younger than your current advisor. I'm more ambitious than your current advisor. I'm going to be with you and listen to you. And I'm not stuck in these ways. And I have all this, like, I'm awesome. I sit there and, how do you convey that? Like, I know I can help this person. I know they need my help, but then for whatever reason, something doesn't work. And they continue to have that relationship with, their old professional and that stuff. It wasn't that, I necessarily didn't get the sale because, in at least the way I was doing it, I had enough business that, any new client is just a benefit, right? I was just more upset that I tried to help somebody and I got so angry and pissed off that, they didn't go with me. I was like, I can help you. And you walked out the door. What is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm,
that annoyed me.
Yeah. No, it's really a function. What you're describing is how heavily do you believe in the thing that you're presenting and offering, and how clear is it to you that it's the right decision for them to make this decision and make this move, and how come they don't see that every single time? Clearly they see it a lot of the time, otherwise you wouldn't be in the successful place you're at, and how we wouldn't have been successful at Eat Blue and UGrub, but they don't see it every time. And you're trying to figure out like what is, and so we would spend a lot of time on rebuttal books. We love the rebuttal books. We'd be like, okay, like what might they say, that Rolodex. Would, yeah, right. Well, they could say something like, hey, I got to talk to my business partner, or, hey, like, I've tried something like this in the past and it didn't work, or, I don't know about this internet, this was the time that we were selling Eat Blue, like, hey, I want something physical I can hold. Like, I don't know what's going on with this whole internet thing you're talking about. But like we would, because that like energy and that frustration that you're describing, we would try to channel that into like we're going to crack the code on this thing. Like, you tell me all the reasons why someone might leave that room without buying into what we're doing. And let's be prepared to counter every one of those rebuttals. And obviously it still doesn't always work that way. but that's kind of how you channel that energy. And if you can find something that you want to sell, that you're as passionate about as what you just described, that you just can't understand why the person across the table from you wouldn't buy this or join you, then you're kind of in the right job and in the right business for you, because you have that, bring that energy to it. And it doesn't feel like sales. It's much more like evangelism, like you're just like, I believe in this thing.
I think that's where I'm at now, with SM, and it's funny because I didn't mean to start this brand of business. I was actually just doing it for myself because actually it really came because of just that. I would sit there and analyze, data points. I have data on how many people would come to a workshop, how many mailers do we get, what's the response rate, how many people would show up to the office. And then, did I scare them when I start talking about tactical money management and what's their management philosophy? And I would analyze different ways that the conversation would go. And of course, our industry has tons and tons of, what we call discovery meeting scripts. And you can't always stick to that. You got to cater it to whoever you're with all the time. So you're always thinking on your feet. But I really was trying to figure out a way to get over some of the tactical rebuttals and the market rebuttals and, people wanting to see or try you out rebuttal, because I got to a point where it was, I could no longer take the smaller account because I didn't have time. And it wasn't to be mean to somebody. It was just that, when you have to put your time and effort into some of these larger cases and, case design, like that's a lot of time when you have a complex case with somebody who has, some money behind them. And then all of a sudden, this thing kind of developed. It was really, it wasn't bizarre, but I think it was just kind of, I developed it and I'm at the point again where I'm like, now if I'm talking to advisors or clients, I'm like, why would you not use us?
Mm-hmm.
I had one person who said, I don't know if I could handle it. I go, it's easy. Like, you need to learn this because you're going to be left behind. Like, I'm helping you so you can stay relevant for the next decade.
Right.
I mean,
but that belief in what you're doing is what, and to me, it's like, when I said like sales is a bad word sometimes and people don't want to be in sales, it's because people think about sales as selling something to somebody that they don't want or need. Right. And if you fundamentally believe that not only, whether they want it or not, they should want it and they do need it, and you just have that internal belief about what you're doing, like I said, then you're in the right business. And it doesn't feel like sales. It feels like you're explaining to somebody something about the world that they don't yet understand or know. And that's a rewarding experience, I think. And I've always found that. So, it's the case, I love the opportunity to convince somebody of something that I believe in. I had that like a little bit from my law school background and my my parents, I think a lot of kids and their parents, they say, this kid's going to be a lawyer because he's such a pain in the ass. He always argues with me. Like that was, but like, I actually liked the, the debate. I enjoyed the kind of the back and forth and exploring kind of like where they're coming from and how to get them, to see the world the way I do. And that to me that's my take on sales. Like I enjoy that back and forth. Now, does that always work? Some other people have different, outlooks on sales, and sales is much more about building a relationship with a person as opposed to like logically deconstructing an argument. I think you have to have both. I don't think you can just be like some friendly guy who's just going to like, I love this guy, but like, I don't understand or believe in anything he's selling because he hasn't explained it adequately. You got to have like a little bit of both. And anyways, I don't know how we got down the tangent of like deconstructing the sales strategy, but I find entrepreneurship, that's my background is entrepreneurship and startups. And I think, to be a great business builder, to be a great entrepreneur, you got to love sales.
What was your first sales job?
I mean, I guess you could say, I started a company when I was 14 mowing lawns. It was called Reasonable Rates Lawn Care. And we had to walk around like door to door and convince them to use us instead of like, whoever else they were using. And
a kid like me that was only mowing one lawn because my dad made me make some money.
It was a neighborhood. It was certainly a neighborhood thing, and it didn't last more than a summer. I think it was 2 summers. I think the second summer we might have hired people to do it. I was so small I could barely push. Like I think when we got like a propelled mower, so that you wouldn't have to like it wasn't as heavy. Maybe I'd get back into it, but I was probably more on the sales side than on the delivery side. But I was definitely doing a lot of sales, and then eatblue.com, it was sales restaurant, door to door for 4 years. as the founder of the company, I was also head of sales, co-founder. And I think I became head of sales only because the day that we had to go start selling into restaurants, I think the other two guys were busy. And I was just like, okay, I'll go do it. And so, it wasn't like some big deliberate like interview process. We're just like, okay, guys, I'll do it. And then I started doing it and liking it. And so they're like, okay, he's getting good at it. Let's let him keep doing that. But every job I've had has some, in my opinion, some sales component to it. If I'm trying to invest in a company, I spent 10 years managing Dan Gilbert's venture investments, investing in tech companies here in Detroit. And if I'm trying to invest in a company, I'm trying to sell that founder, hey, you should take our money instead of somebody else's. So there's still sales there. And so like I said, every job has a sales element to it.
Well, let's pivot to that for a second, because I think you just hit upon something that most people who are seeking to raise capital don't understand. And I've only started to understand this recently, just because of where we're at in our cycle. But you just said that you'd have to convince somebody to take your money,
right?
And that's a great spot for somebody with a business to be in, right? But maybe expand upon that a little bit. Why would you have to convince somebody to take your money when somebody you hear people they're first off, we see everything on CNBC where people are raising, next round hundreds of millions of dollars, and everybody thinks, man, everybody just is throwing money at them. Why would a company not just take everything they can get? So expand upon that a little bit. If you
please. Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, first of all, I'll just say one thing, which is there's something called selection bias. I like thinking about like cognitive biases and things like that, but there's a bias called selection bias, which means like we look at only a certain selection of data points when we make our decision, and depending on how we select that information, it might give us the wrong conclusion. And I would say great example of selection bias is when you're looking at headlines and assuming that that's what fundraising is like, because really you're just looking at the most successful, most outrageously successful fundraising experiences. But 99% of fundraising isn't what you see in the headlines. It's everybody that doesn't make the headlines, right? And so it'd be like trying to figure out like what it's like to play basketball and only looking at the most successful pro players. But most people playing basketball in America never make it to that level. And so so certainly it looks easy to raise money. It's not, and it's difficult. And you talk to investors and they look at 100 companies will invest in one sort of thing. But there are the scenarios where a company is onto something, and once it's obvious that company has growth and has something special, it's obvious not just to one investor. It tends to be obvious to a lot of investors all at the same time. Some visionary investor who can see it before everybody else, that's an advantage for them, right? Because they can now go and invest in that company before it gets competitive. But most people aren't visionaries. It's not, most people look at the data and look at the evidence and they say, okay, this company is probably going to be a great company and I want to invest in it. Well, everybody comes to that conclusion at the same time. And now you've got 100 investors trying to invest in the same company. And that's when I'm talking about having to sell to the founder as to why you should take my money over taking all that other money. And to your point about, well, could they take all the money? Well, they just don't want to sell that much of the company. They might want to sell 20% of the company. They probably don't want to sell 90% of the company. If they take everyone's money, they're selling too much. And so, so they might say, okay, I want to raise $3 or $4 million. And sure, you can compete on price. I say, I'll pay a higher valuation, but at a certain point, you're going to max that out. And you're just going to have to choose between several investors, which of them I prefer to have as investors. And I'm going to take the $3 million from someone. Again, this is that like small slice of the world where you find where a company is in a position where they get to choose. I've been on both sides of that. I've been I've seen companies where, they're looking for money wherever they can get it. And then fast forward, that same company 2 or 3 years later is now turning down investors. And it's just the catch-22 of building a company, right? You need money to make progress. You need progress to raise money. That's the catch-22. As soon as you have the progress, you got all the money in the world because people are interested in investing in you. But, boy, it would have been nice to have that sort of interest when you were just getting started. And it's, if it was that easy, then everybody would be a successful entrepreneur. So anyways, I hope that's a roundabout way of kind of answering your question.
No, that I think that's great. But what do you, so you've been in the VC space. What's the difference between VC and private equity?
VC and private equity.
Why would you be cooler to the private equity guy?
You know, as it turns, VC and private equity, people probably have all different explanations, and I'm sure they start to blend into each other at certain kinds of things. But I think of private equity investors as people that invest in profitable companies that are later stage and are looking at like multiples of EBITDA, as they're valuing businesses. And I think of venture capital investors who are looking more at markets and market size and team and product market fit and trying to predict, if a company can be a really high growth, fast growth business, as opposed to just analyzing what is probably a mature business that's already profitable, but how many more multiples can we drive that thing? I usually think venture capital comes first and private equity comes later or last. That's how and I'm in venture capital. And I've been affiliated with some private equity folks, and we used to joke that, if the company's not making any money, yeah, send that one to me. And if they're making a lot of money, that one goes to the private equity investors. So private equity investors have more data to deal with when they're making their decisions because they're more mature businesses that they're investing in.
So is Signal the first one that you've taken on kind of as a adult? I mean, I don't like calling ourselves adults because
sure.
I feel that way. Regardless of our birth date.
Yeah, we're adults now. When I was a kid in college, I started Eat Blue and UGrub, and that was awesome. It was a lot of fun. But I came out of that experience saying I could have known a lot more headed into this thing. And man, like next time I do this, I'm going to just be so much smarter, and I'm going to have so much more resources behind me. And I'm going to come back to this thing, and I'm going to build a company. And that actually got me into venture capital as like a career path. I was like, this is going to be a great way to learn about entrepreneurship. It took me a lot longer to come back into being a co-founder than maybe I predicted. When you're 20 years old, 22, 24, 5 years is probably the longest you can even think. So the fact that it took me 10 years to get back here, but now I get to be a co-founder and build a company again and use all the things I learned in venture capital and all the things I learned in, back at UGrub and Eat Blue. So it's a pretty cool opportunity for me to bring all that to bear. And by the way, it's still not easy. Even after, investing in all these companies, being in all these boards, and Pat Kelly, my co-founder, and Kevin O'Hare is my other co-founder. We got three of us. We've all built companies in the past. So we're all kind of like, but we all still have a chip on our shoulder that like, we want to build something bigger and better than what we did in the past. And so, being able to bring all that experience to bear, man, I just remember how little I knew when I got started. That's what it reminds me of. When I got started in my first company, I'm like, amazing that we were able to make it as successful as we did, given how little when you first get started. But it's a lot of fun, regardless of the stage you're at. So,
I want to be careful so you don't give away things that you don't want to give away. But I think we can say, okay, so how did the three of you guys get together?
Sure.
Did you know them previously? I kind of know a little history about you and Pat, and I'm going to talk to Pat a little later.
Oh, great.
And do another podcast with him. I haven't met Kevin, so I might have to.
Yeah, you probably need to get Kevin on there, because we all have our entrepreneurial journeys that we've been on kind of on our own, and then they kind of cross paths for different reasons. For Pat, I met Pat when he was raising money for his previous company called RepPro. And this was he was a financial advisor. He started at Northwestern Mutual, and then he went into a family practice and started this software company, really solving a problem for himself, right? I mean, they were selling annuities and life insurance, and the application submission process was a pain. And so they decided, okay, we're going to solve that problem. We're going to build a software company, make it easier. While he was on that journey, I met him when he was raising money, and he came to Detroit Venture Partners, and him and Joe Waltenbach, who's now at Signal as well. The two of them came to our office. And so it was awesome meeting them early on. They were really young, excited entrepreneurs. And I saw from the beginning that they were an interesting team, and there was a couple things left to tweak on the business model. And so I kept in touch with them, and they ended up raising money from other people and industry insiders. And then they actually ended up selling the business. And that's, I was kind of, I don't want an advisor, but I was around for Pat throughout this process as he was raising money, as he was, making decisions to sell his business. And I was just kind of a sounding board for him, to be honest, an informal advisor and friend. And then when he sold the business and he's talking about what he was going to do next, that's when, I kind of suggested to him, what if we do something together? And because I was at that point and I was ready to be a founder. And so that's how Pat and I got together. It's great when you know each other for a while and you get kind of to see each other in action. And Kevin and I've been on a board. I was on a board with Kevin for a number of years. He was the CTO of a company that we invested in. And so when Pat and I got together, we knew we needed a CTO as well and third co-founder. And so I was like, Pat, I got a number one draft pick in mind. I think he's happy where he is, but I'm just going to go ask him for some advice, and who knows where it might lead. And so I went to Kevin and literally just asked for advice about how we might set up our tech stack and what kind of, CTO might be valuable to us and co-founder, and didn't ask him at all about joining the team. I find that sometimes that's the best sales strategy. For investors, they say, if you're trying to raise money, I think the saying is, if you're looking for money, ask for advice. If you're looking for advice, ask for money. Meaning if you go in and someone say, hey, put some money into my company, they're probably going to have a lot of advice for you about how to grow your business. If you say, hey, I'm just looking for advice, they're like, well, what are you doing for money anyways? Like maybe I want to put some money in it. It's the soft sell. And I think that works for co-founders too. You go in and say, hey, I'm not looking to recruit you or anything, but I'm curious to get your advice. And they're like, maybe I want to go work for this company. So that's how we got Kevin. We kind of slow played him. Anyways, longer answer, but bottom line is I've known Kevin and Pat independently for 6, 7, 8 years. And the fact that we could all come together to build this company together is just kind of, perfect timing.
Yeah, I think we have about 10 minutes left, right? 10, 20.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
Okay. So I gotta be choosy on, I have a whole list of questions. I'm just joking. I have no questions.
I was going to say, I could we can go lightning round if you want. I've been answering, my answers are 10 minutes long. I can make them 30 seconds.
No. This is great. Because like I said, kind of previous when we were getting our stuff figured out, it's just a conversation. I kind of like to see where the heck it goes. It doesn't have to necessarily be, it doesn't have to be a pitch about your company or my company. That's irrelevant. I'm more interested in just, how do people kind of get to where they're at? That's kind of like the fun of podcasting, right?
I love it. I love hearing this. I like your job. I want to go invite people onto a show and just be able to talk to them and learn about their backgrounds. I mean, I think that's a fun spot to be because, I'm always very curious about careers, and how you ended up where you're at. And I live vicariously through people who are making career decisions about what do I do next? And I'm always offering advice and trying to help them crack the code on that stuff. So it's a fun conversation to have.
Well, I'm hoping I can keep it up. I mean, the problem with where the position I'm in right now is the schedule's packed every single day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've noticed that over the years, I spend more time getting to know people on the phone now that we can do the whole, Skype thing and the podcast thing. I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help. It's going to help for one thing, like advisors that we have on the show or that I talk to. It's going to help get them in front of a camera, but also just having that humane conversation. I think there's too many people that are out there, and I started this too. My channel right now, where depending upon whenever somebody watches this, but where it's currently at, I have some videos on there that are more salesy that I'm actually just going to take off because I don't find them relevant anymore, and that's not what I'm interested in. It's so funny how you as a business owner or just a person shift in how you view things, as you go through time, of course. But
oh, absolutely.
This is fun. This is a lot of fun, and I'm already booked with probably about a dozen other people to keep this on. So I know this will just continue. And
that's great. No, it'll keep coming. That's a great way to do it. When you meet people, you don't have to you just kind of take them as they come. Oh, I met some. Oh, they'd be an interesting guest. It's a good opportunity to get back together with people and really go deep and have a conversation. So, especially when you don't have to prepare. I'm always open to doing stuff I don't prepare for. It's great. If you say, hey, I got to put a PowerPoint together, I'd be like, how's 2022?
Yeah. That's a lot of fun. I got to tell you, the whole actually being on TV thing, and they give you, let me tell you this. they tell you kind of general topics, and then so
Yeah.
you start researching, preparing for the day because you have to get pretty current, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
the problem is, then all of a sudden you get on the show and they don't talk about any of that.
Oh yeah. I don't envy that, to be honest. I've always kind of shied away from like, the recorded interviews or the recorded podcasts or whatever, only because, I feel like I need like the right sound bite. I need the right, like you can't stutter. You can't like miss a beat. And it's all about, and it's about like the presentation as much as it is the substance. And so, it's a great skill to have. I've just never thought of myself as someone who is perfectly comfortable, with that skill. I'd prefer to have a little bit of, for some reason in the one-on-one conversations, it feels different when you get up in front of the camera, pressure's
Yeah.
on, and can you come up with the right soundbite on the spot? That being said, it can be fun. You got like the adrenaline going. So, I feel like and I feel like you got the right energy for it. So I think you're going to enjoy that.
Yeah, well, I lived in California, did some acting classes.
Oh, there you go.
Just so you know, this is live on the record here. I had one agent in my 15 years of being there who got me 2 auditions the entire time I was there. 2. One was because I was supposed to drive my car. They were looking for cars that looked like what I had at the time, and I don't know why, it was an old beat up Saturn Ion. So maybe they just wanted kind of a beat up car. I don't even remember what the commercial was for. And then I did go out for a Bud Light commercial once.
Nice.
Yeah, that
I mean,
was
I've
it.
never had that experience. That sounds so nerve-wracking to me. But
I'm typically not nervous in front of people, which took me a while to get to. That's a story for another time, because I'm always I'm an extrovert as kind of an individual, but I was scared to get in front of large groups of audience, but I forced myself to. I'll tell you that story. It took me a while, but learned to cope.
that's interesting.
Now I can get in front of anybody and it doesn't matter.
There's an old like Jerry Seinfeld skit where he's talking about people's number one fear is public speaking.
Yep.
And he goes, the number one fear is public speaking. He goes, the number 2 fear is death. He goes, that means the average person would rather be, if they had to be at a funeral, they'd rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. It's like a classic Jerry Seinfeld skit, but the public speaking thing is a real thing. Like, it strikes people, there's something about being judged by a lot of people all at once that like our social, nature. I don't know what it is. Someone has a lot of research on it, I'm sure, but I would imagine like all the big Zooms that are going on where you have like 15 people on a Zoom, probably the reason why everyone's so exhausted is because they're like feeling like they're being judged by 15 people at once all the time. And you're seeing yourself and you're seeing the 15 people. And so we'll have a lot of good research, I would imagine, in the coming years about what that does to people.
Well, you do expel a lot of energy. So like, you even talk to advisors that do workshops and classes, you're super jazzed up. You're excited. You're giving all this energy out, at least if it's a good presenter.
Mm-hmm.
There's some,
right. You'd hope there's some energy.
But I remember I was doing, and I know we only have a few minutes left, but there was this one workshop I did. It was 6 hours on a Saturday. And it was like going deep into every financial topic. By the way, I cut that down to an hour and a half eventually, because I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yep.
But I would get home and Christina, my wife, would be like, she knew just to leave me on the couch. Let me
You're done. You're going to watch some TV.
And just like, the energy's gone, like it sucked it out of you for that day. And that kind of happened out of, you would be really high after a presentation. Like, I did some big sales kickoff meetings, some brand kickoff meetings in the past, and some local distributors, going over some energy drinks, 6 a.m. in the morning. And then, you'd be jazzed up for like an hour, and then all of a sudden you just crash for the rest of the day. It was kind of crazy, but
no, it's so true. What you get, where your energy comes from, what gets you energized, what gets you kind of, what knocks you out. I mean, you got to find that. You got to figure out how to balance yourself out. I got to go, get into a workout routine or something, but I've got a lot of ups and downs throughout the day because of that, and at the end of a day of Zooming, like you're just kind of, you got to hit the couch. But your kids are getting home, and now you're kind of you got to have the energy for them. And so now we're getting into, life advice, and I don't have any for people on that front. Just hang on and figure it out.
You have to wake up early. Do you have, well, my thing is I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I check a couple emails. I might get back to somebody here and there, and then I go down and I hit a workout. But I created a gym over time in my basement to do that. But that's the only time I could really do it. Otherwise, like you said, you get tired. But my last question for you is, if you could ask Joe Gissy one thing, what do you want to know about me?
Oh man. No, I love understanding like how people got on a path, like, because I know that my path started when I was a kid. And so I feel like a lot of people, a lot of people have a lot more influence about what they do in life, and the menu that they're choosing off of, is set for them kind of early in life in a lot of ways. And it's good and bad. But, you know, I'm just kind of curious how you as a kid, if you were to say, okay, how does me as a kid lead to me right now? Like how do you draw that line? How do you connect the dots between kind of like you growing up and like what was influence over you? And, if I asked that, like if some kid fell in love with like cars when they were a kid and they became a car designer, it'd be an easy kind of like, connect the dots thing. But I'm kind of curious, you as a kid, like what were the things that happened to you or that you kind of, when you were growing up, that kind of led to where you are today?
So I have a question for you. Do you have 5 minutes? Because I know we're scheduled.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll tell you a little bit. Then I'll try not to make it 10 minutes. So my dad, I tell the story. I've told this in workshops and seminars. He started capital management in our basement. I mean, he worked for another firm, and then him and a good buddy of his decided they wanted to be advisors, and they went out on their own. And I remember it was like a piece of plywood. It was like 2 filing cabinets, and he had his telephone in there. And I remember that as like it was a unfinished portion of the basement when he originally started this business. And then he eventually got an office outside of the house, and then we moved to a new house, and he built an in-house office. So he had actually kind of done the at home, away from home. When we was at home, I saw people walking around to our, walk-in basement into his office. He would see people at our house, or he would go to lunch. And so he started that in 1986, and I was born in 81. So, I mean, ever since I was little, I saw that. My mom has also been an entrepreneur her whole life. She's done multiple different ventures with my stepdad and her. They've done all kinds of different things, from building homes, which they're really good at. They're good at. That's why I'm not flipping a home, but I'm working on my own house right now.
Right.
Probably because of them. I saw how they could actually build their own home. They would build subdivisions and all that stuff. And then they've done other things throughout their life. She actually built one really interesting company that had to deal with oil rigs and EPA like plans, disaster plans.
Okay.
And they built a business that ended up being, a couple $1 million business, and they ended up selling that business, and that was in Oklahoma. So I kind of saw that trajectory. I guess I was around that, kind of like to your point, so I was kind of seeing that people have done their own thing. My first, business venture would have been, I got a story for you at another time, but the first business venture, and you can call it a pyramid scheme or network marketing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But I got into, I just remember this was with selling long distance services.
Okay.
And, I watched their video, and their video was like, if you recruit, X amount of people, you can make money off what they do. And I'm like,
right.
What? This is crazy. And
it's so exciting.
I was in high school. So I was like, this is amazing. I wanted to break records, and I found out like, the record at the time was like opening up 10 lines of service in under 5 hours. Well, my dad had a business, and he had 4 lines because he had like a fax, an internet line, and that his business line, and a home line. And then I called my mom. She had like 2 lines, and I was adding it up. I go, I can do this. I'm going to open up 10 lines in 30 minutes. And I did that. And that was like the success story. And everybody was like, wow, look at this kid. He's amazing. He did 10 lines of, long distance service in under 30 minutes, and I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. And then of course, all my buddies had to come join. Right. And I made like a little commission. And I probably that summer made like $3,000. Right. But it was like you said,
it's a lot. Right. I mean, yeah, the first time you make $3,000, it might as well be 300 grand. There's no difference. Like, I mean, it's just like, it's a big difference than, having, a little bit of allowance, or a little bit of, your parents are giving you a few $100 a month to pay for your dorm room. It's so yeah. It's
this is high school too. So that was
high school.
Probably like junior year, and then senior year, my little brother got into Cutco knives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I jumped into that, but he already got the family, so I had to go with my own friend network and sell knives. And then in college, was always looking for things to do. I mean, like I had multiple jobs,
Mhm.
always looking to start something. Kind of like I didn't know what I was going to start, but I knew I'd start something. I ended
Yeah.
up, I had to tell my dad this years later because he thought I moved to LA to be an actor. And that was like, it was kind of like one of those things where I was like, well, if it happens, that's cool. But if it doesn't, I don't really care. I'm actually coming out here because it's a big city and I want to get out of St. Louis and I want to like, I want to try to make it in a bigger city, you know,
Yep.
and do it. And I started this is right as MySpace was blowing up. MySpace had like 30,000 users, and they had that online community. So I created a community for actors, models, and musicians. And I was on like Craigslist, putting ads left and right, you know, every morning for a few hours just to get new users. And I ended up with like 3,000 users, which was that was pretty big, but didn't really have a good, you know, technical background. I wasn't the one designing the community or the site. We outsourced
Right.
that overseas.
Hmm.
We ended up getting sued by the largest company, Breakdown Services, or I got a cease and desist letter. Uh, and because we started using breakdowns that we were getting off this guy on the streets, like, here's where all the actors can go auditions. And we're like, cool, we'll put those on our website. So that way these talents can go do the same thing. Cause we were trying to help them out. Right. And then
Right.
that scared me because this guy knocks on my door and throws me this letter and I'm going, oh, am I, so that ended that company for me.
Yeah.
I went back to then working at the time I was working at Anheuser-Busch, and then I ended up working at Monster Energy.
Well,
Back
what's
in
interesting
sales.
about what you're saying is, I don't think people realize how much influence, maybe they do, maybe I don't realize it, and maybe I'm just, and everybody else does, but how much influence you have, how much your upbringing and what your parents do has an influence on what you do, and then how much of what you do is going to influence what your kids do. And the fact that you're in life, we feel like we're kind of choosing from a bunch of options, but really we're choosing from the options that are in front of us. I like to think
Right.
of it like we're ordering off a menu. Like what menu you're presented with is going to determine kind of what you order for dinner that night. And it's not like you're ordering off an infinite menu. It's kind of what to be out there as options for you. And you say, yeah, maybe my childhood kind of had a lot of impact on that. And you're saying my parents were flipping houses and now I'm fixing up my house, and my dad was a financial advisor. Now I'm, building a financial advisory business. So clearly huge impact. And it's kind of cool to connect the generations in that way. Like it feels very old school where like you're, back in the day, like you'd have like the same job as your parents, and your last name would be, Goldsmith because you're a goldsmith. And then like, I think it's kind of, there's still more connection to what our parents did than maybe we really recognize. And, anyways, that's why that was my one question for you was
Yeah, that was awesome.
how your upbringing kind of impacted where you end up today, which sounds like a major impact on him.
Well, let me tell you this one last thing here. I didn't want to get into finance because I wanted to do my own thing, right?
Yep.
Like that was my major task. I only got into finance because at the time I was working at Monster, and I went to the seminar, and TD Ameritrade was doing this thing where they were selling their program on how to buy and sell options and
Okay.
trading. I went to that, I learned how to do it, and then I started getting into trading basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up calling, this is like 2009. I called my dad and go, well, what is it you actually do? And I started having a conversation with him. And then slowly over time, I started getting into it until I realized.
But isn't it funny? Like, so yeah, technically you say, if you were just kind of in the moment, you'd be like, I'm not doing this because of my dad. Like I saw this TD Ameritrade thing and I wanted to do options trading and I got into that. And then I reached out to my dad. But if you really zoom out, like there's got to be some, part of you that was more open to that TD Ameritrade options trading idea because of how you grew up and because of what you saw your dad doing and because of your familiarity with it. Even at the moment you might have been too deep in the forest to, in the trees to see the forest. It's not totally unrelated. And, anyways, I just find it, interesting to think about how we land where we land.
Well, I think that's probably a good stopping point. We went 6 over on your calendar.
No, it's great. Flies by,
Yeah,
it really does.
That was fun. Well, Jake,
a lot of fun.
We'll do it again some other time. I'm going to have to get you to connect me with Kevin, and at least
the trifecta, the Signal Advisors, co-founders trifecta. It sounds like you got your first leg of the stool here. You got Pat coming up next, and then you can have Kevin Batten third cleanup here when you get to it. But we all have kind of different backgrounds, different experiences, and I think that's what'll hopefully help this company be successful.
I think what would be fun, I just thought of this too, is if we put a little panel together down the road. So, depending upon how many people subscribe and start watching, but then having like a panel discussion, over entrepreneurship and just stuff like that, and letting people ask questions. I think that would be fun. That's what makes it more fun.
Yeah, I love the spontaneous. I love the spontaneousness of it and answering people's questions about entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurship, love startups. It doesn't feel like work. So would love to be on a panel or do whatever you've got cooking. So count me in.
Sounds good, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, Jake. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Great talking to you, Joe.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.